believed, was their land by right and title. But now, in a series of deceptions, Rhodes and his cronies proceeded to dispossess the Matabele of their land, their cattle, and their independence.
One day, King Lobengula told a story to a white visitor to his court. He said to him, "Have you ever watched a chameleon and a fly? The chameleon gets behind the fly and gently puts one foot forward, then another. And when he's close enough, he darts his tongue, and the fly disappears. I am that fly," said Lobengula, "and you are the chameleon."
On the outskirts of his royal kraal, Lobengula had allowed a few white missionaries to establish themselves. This is all that remains of a settlement run by Jesuits, whose celibate way of life had no appeal to the Matabele. But other missionaries, Protestants of various denominations, because, of course, the many schisms of the Christian faith were also imported with the missionaries, did begin to acquire some influence, but not without misunderstandings, as this old man, now well over 100, remembers.
Katina mwacheti china mamandira cheti sibhaya maziso taisingazive kuti yani vaiuya chete kuuya zvavo singazive kuti vanobva kupi achibva kumba kwake uko.
Not far from the capital, across a small river, was the Anglican mission of Hope Fountain. The early missionaries were caught, almost at once, in an unavoidable dilemma. To whom was their first loyalty? To the Africans, who trusted them and whose guests they were, or to their own kith and kin? The Reverend Charles Helm, who lived in this place, made in the end a crucial choice. He was Lobengula's trusted white friend, but secretly at the same time, he began to work for Rhodes. The fact was that these missionaries soon became convinced, and no doubt rightly, and as their records show, that if they were going to convert a sizable number of Matabele, the king's power must be destroyed and Matabele culture and independence undermined. And Rhodes, they saw, was the man to do both. Step by step, Lobengula's power was eroded. He appealed to Queen Victoria. He was advised to sign treaties. Some of those who advised him to sign the treaties had come in peace and trust, but they still deceived him. The Reverend Helm lies buried here. On his tomb, his fellow missionaries felt able to inscribe the words, "Friend of the Matabele." Was he their friend? Or from within the certainties of his own belief, did he connive in their betrayal? By 1890, Rhodes and his men were ready to move. These are scenes from the feature film Roads of Africa, about the famous pioneer column. They show it in terms of the glorious legend it was to become for the white settlers who followed, almost a justification in itself for their right to the land they were about to seize. Lobengula had 16,000 warriors eager to attack, but fearing defeat, he held them back. The column headed north, avoiding direct contact with the Matabele and passing unopposed through the country of the less warlike Shona. Each man had been promised 15 gold prospecting claims and a 3,000-acre farm. A contemporary described them like this.
Such a mixed lot I never saw in my life. all sorts and conditions from the aristocrat down to the street Arab, tiers and waifs of humanity mingling together like a hodgepodge.
Some of the pioneers came, in fact, from the leading families of Cape Colony. If the expedition met with defeat, Rhodes knew that their influential fathers would press the British government for military assistance. An unknown photographer captured the moment when the Union Jack was raised over Fort Salisbury, fulfilling Rhodes's dream that this earth shall be English. The moment became part of the myth. Established here for no particular reason of geography, Fort Salisbury duly became the modern city of Salisbury, now renamed Harare. Elsewhere on the continent, towns can be unmistakably African in their flavour and their style of life, but not this one. In just on 60 years, they turned it into the very model of a white man's city. And just over there is the flagstaff that commemorates the place where all that began. Amazingly enough, it's still here. So this is what it says: to the Pioneer Corps, specially recruited to become the first civil population of Mashonaland. But who were more civil? The black people who had long dwelt in Mashonaland and made it fruitful, or the white people who came here and took it from them by deceit and violence? Maybe that sounds a harsh question now, and yet the dispossession of the Shona was also harsh. They had settled the land centuries earlier, mastered and tamed it. And now, with this, they had altogether lost their birthright. Among those who had travelled up with the pioneers was Rhodes's close friend and instrument, Dr. Starr Jameson. Rhodes now chose him to administer this newly won territory. To the southwest, there still remained the undefeated Matabele. In 1892, Jameson decided that the time had come to finish with them. A pretext was easily found. Although the Shona people were now supposed to be under white protection, they were still the target of sporadic Matabele raids. A dispute over cattle quickly produced the war that Jameson needed. In traditional style, the Matabele regiments prepared to fight for their capital, Bulawayo, against Jameson's advancing troops. No amount of Matabele courage could matter now. As an English poet wrote in bitter satire, "Whatever happens, we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not." After defeat came dispossession. Nearly all of Matabele farming land and most of the 250,000 Matabele cattle were confiscated by Rhodes's British South Africa Company or by individual settlers, the structure of Matabele life was shattered. The London Missionary Society wrote to congratulate Rhodes. As missionaries, we have little to bind our sympathies to the Matabele, neither can we pity the downfall of their power. Lobengula is said to have told his followers that rather than have a single bone of his body touched by a white man, he would disappear like a needle in the grass. And disappear he did, while some of his warriors tried vainly to find a new homeland northward across the Zambezi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.